Hello and welcome to Murder Analysed. I'm Christina Moore. Please subscribe by hitting the subscribe button that you can see in the corner. Give us the thumbs up. You can follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Just look for Murder Analysed and follow us through them links. Really great to have you on our channel. Also, we'd love to see some comments from you on what you think of the channel, and we will get back to you in time. So thanks for watching this video. So today, let's talk about an English case. UK, Liverpool, 12th February 1993. It is the James Bulger murder case. Now the victim was James Bulger. He was 2-year-old at the time of his murder. The perpetrators, the killers, were John Venables and Robert Thompson, and they were 10-year-old at the time of the murder. Okay, so we're looking at children killing a child. So this case, this case doesn't just stop with that, but you'll see that as we go through. So I'm going to start with 2 young boys getting up in the morning and deciding they're not going to go to school. They're actually going to go to the local shopping centre and play truant from school and just create havoc for the day. So John Venables and Robert Thompson make their way to the shopping centre. When they're in there, they are messing about on the escalators. They are stealing things from the shop. They stole blue paint. They stole batteries. They stole like some sort of toys and some little dolls and stuff. And it was just literally causing, they're a nightmare. They've got these 2 young children with no parent, skipping school, in the shopping centre, being a nightmare. But at the same time in this shopping centre, there was a lady called James Bulger and her son James. She had come to go to the meat shop to order her meat, and she must have only been there a few moments. So she was in that shop at 15:40 p.m. She's come out of the shop, and all of a sudden she can't find James. He's gone. She was literally in there only a few seconds, a minute even, and this child had gone. So she is frantic. She is looking all over the shops, as you would be when you can't find your child, and she's thinking he's in another shop, or so you have store security looking, you have everyone looking for this child. They couldn't find him. But what they didn't know was that he'd already been taken. So once we had James missing, I think now we'll go to what's happened to him. So, as she is frantically looking, Denise is frantically looking, 2 young 10-year-olds have led this boy away, one holding his hand, one in front, walking in front, and they are making their way out of the exit with this child. They've took this child on about a 2.5-mile walk. They continued on this walk. I mean, don't forget, it's only 2, so it's only little. 2.5 miles is quite a long way. It's even a longer way when you're being kicked and punched, hurt and abused as you're walking down the street with these 2. So they make their way down to the canal. By the time they get down to the canal, they've literally picked James up and dropped him on his head. So now he's got a massive bruise. He's bleeding. He is now terrified. He now knows, even at 2, this isn't right. He's crying for his mum, everything else. They pick him up. One picks him up and starts carrying him, then they start dragging him along again. 38 people saw James and these boys. I don't think anyone saw them drop him on his head, but they did see him being dragged. They saw him crying, but they thought they were related to him. In them days, we wouldn't have thought that 2 10-year-olds were hurting this child. That wasn't what people thought. If they did, they probably would have intervened. But they didn't. So as they made their way down past the canal, where they did stop for a moment and think, we're going to chuck him in. We're just going to chuck him in the canal. But they changed their mind and thought they'd keep him for a little while longer. They let the torture go on. So as they continued walking, there was 2 people that stopped, or 2 groups of people. One of that group was an older lady who had a young child with her, and did stop and ask and question about James. Who is he? What's wrong? They lied to her. They said oh, it's our brother and we're just taking him home. No, sorry, they didn't. They said, not to that one. They said to that old lady, sorry, we're going to take him to the police station because we've just found him, he's lost. The police station was about a mile walk away from there. And the older lady, because she had this younger child with her, could not walk this child that far. And don't forget, in 1993, we didn't have mobile phones and technology like we had today. We couldn't just pick up the phone and go, police, we found a missing child. You would have had to have walked him to there or to a phone box, waited, and she couldn't do that for some reason. But she did question, she did stop, and she believed the boys when they said that they were going to take him to the police station. So she let them on their way. Then they had a second encounter with a group of boys that they knew, older boys that they knew. They told him it was one of their brothers and they was going to take him home. He was just upset. They again let them go. So now they've gone past the canal. This boy is still bleeding, still got a big bruise on his head, still frantic, you know, in distress with these two, but they've been allowed to go on. So they've made themselves now way down now to the railway bank. And there is a video of them paused at the bottom of this railway bank. And people have said, oh, they was probably deciding what to do with him, or, you know, let him go. James Bulger was never ever going to be let go. They didn't pause there because they were thinking, oh, how can we get rid of him, you know, nicely. They're thinking of their next move, and that will come more clearer as we go through this case. That boy was never going to live. So they've took him up to the bank. Don't forget, it's a dark, cold February night. They're on top of this railway bank, out the middle of nowhere. No one's going to go up this bank. One of the boys has then thrown the blue paint that they stole from the shop earlier into his face and his eyes. They've put batteries in his mouth. They've kicked him, punched him, hit him with bricks, hit him with a 22-pound iron bar, then started to remove his shoes, trousers and underwear. And the pathologist did say that the foreskin had been manipulated in some way. There was other things that happened in that site that made the pathologist and the police believe that this could be a sexually motivated crime. Again, let's wait till the end for you to make up your own mind about what you think this crime was really about, because they've never said. So by the time they've done this, James, at this point, the pathologist thinks is already dead. But they don't leave it there. They then take the child down to the railway track. They place a 2-year-old, James, on the railway track. They cover his head with building material to weigh him down, and they leave him. James is then cut in half by a train, and that's how James Bulger died, by the hands of 2 10-year-olds. A very sadistic case. But what happens next? These 2 boys then decide to go home. That's it. Done. They leave the site, they leave him, they go home. Because they think, people are going to think it's an accident. We've put him on this train, he's been cut in half. People are going to believe it's an accident. Well, that's not just a 10-year-old thinking that. Actually, some murderers think that. You know, but unfortunately for them, you know, we have police and we have evidence and the gathering of evidence and forensic evidence that can tell whether a case is a pure murder or an accident. So this was clearly a murder. So they've gone home, just gone back to their normal life. Some of the most hardened murderers still have some regret or some remorse for what they've done. Find it difficult sometimes to go home and just act as normal. But you've got 2 10-year-olds doing this. Literally just gone home, got on with their day. By this stage, you have the police now looking at the CCTV footage from the shopping centre. And it is clear to see that James is being led off, one by holding his hand and the other boy in front, by 2 boys, which they assumed by the size of, I think, Venables, because he was a bigger lad, there was about 14. So these images were then put out on newspapers. This is an abduction now. This boy's not come home for days. The police, there's a very good police force actually in Liverpool, in that area. At that time they were very good and they were on it. But of course they could only see what you could see on footage. No one else had known what's happened to this child. So with what they had, they done the best. The press were really good as well. You had a lot of press releases. A lot of people were looking for this child, including the local community. So a lot of people thought by the footage and the age of the child, it was certain other kids in the area. And let me tell you, they had quite a terrible time of it. But it was one of the neighbours, I think, of Thompson, that rang the police, because when it was released about the blue paint, because there was blue paint at the crime scene. Again, evidence, anything can be evidence. So the neighbour rang the police and said, I think you're looking for younger boys, because one of my neighbours came home that day with blue paint on his clothes and on his shoes. Now the police then, I don't think at that point, believed that 10-year-olds could do this. So when they turned up at the door, I think they may have been a witness, or they may have gone through the crime scene at some point and could have given some information about the crime. But I don't actually think that they were actually thinking this is the perpetrators of this crime. So the boys were then taken in for questioning to the local police station. And it was in there that things started to change. So you had Venables that literally cried all the time, wept for about 4 days, crying. Couldn't get really word out of him. Story changed about 5 times. Where you had Thompson, that was this cold, calculated boy, even at 10. He didn't cry. They used to call him the boy that didn't cry. But their stories were changing so much, and the stories were conflicting stories. So they knew something was wrong. They knew something was up. In the end, one of the boys did admit that they had done the murder. And some of the police, or one of the police officers, the investigating officers, did say about Thompson that he knew something was wrong. He said he could see evil in his eyes, and because of his outward personality, this unfeeling, uncaring, no empathy at all in anything. He was as cold as ice. But anyway, they admitted it, and they sort of then was charged with abduction and murder. So at the time, they were the youngest charged with these crimes. And by the time it got to court, they were then tried as adults, because they were 11 then. So they were the youngest in our history to have, a pair of murderers at the age, to have been tried for that. Anyway, let's go back to the case, and let's now look at the trial itself, because there's a lot of controversy about this trial, and there's a lot of controversy about how do you deal with 10-year-olds? How do you deal with children murdering children, or children murdering anybody? So there was a lot of controversy. So I know that the court, the trial had to be moved from one court to another because of the danger towards these 2 10-year-olds. You've got a society out there that couldn't believe that these children could do this. They were known in that area. People knew them. Not saying they thought they were great kids, but no one would have thought they were murderers. So the society at that point, I think, was conflicted itself. You had these 2 lads trying to be brought into court in the vans or in the transport trucks, and they was being stoned, and bricks were thrown at them. It was very, very violent. The venue had to be moved for the protection of them 2 children. So, and I think also to give them a fair trial. It's good. When you're talking about 2 10-year-olds, that one had to be put on top of a box to see over the dock. This is how young these are. Plus, I don't think our court has ever dealt with anything like that. I think we had the case of Mary Bell in the 60s, and that was actually a controversial case at the time itself. But ever since then, you're talking about 30 years on, Now, this is now another murder, and again, how do we deal with children? How do we deal with the trial of a child? You know, even the investigation of this child, the investigators would have found it difficult. So then you've got this trial, and the whole trial, I think, is questionable. But I think what came out in the trial is clear evidence that this was not an accident. This wasn't something that just happened. These pair had stated that that day they was going to go out and kill a child. They was going to go out and take a child and throw that child under moving traffic to make it look like an accident, a little like they'd done with James. You know, thinking they could get away with it. They didn't do that because I don't think they thought they could get away with it in the end. But also what came out in that trial, James was not the victim of choice. It wasn't their first choice. They tried it earlier in the day. They tried to abduct another child, another boy, earlier in the day. But the woman noticed her son was missing but could still see him and chased after them and got hold of her child and scolded her child, actually, don't run off, you're running off. And they said to her, lied, but we was going to hand him in, or we was looking for you. We was trying to help him, assist him. So when you look at this trial, this case, there was many options in that day. They had many opportunities in that day to not do any murder, to not do anything. And even the risk of being caught the first time by trying to abduct didn't stop them. They went on then, a few hours later, to abduct James. So this was clearly a murder with intent. So the actus mens rea were met for a criminal trial on murder charges. The evidence was there, clear evidence. I think Venables actually asked, can you get a fingerprint off of skin, when he was in an interview. Now that is a telling thing, isn't it? To think that even at 10-year-old they'd already tried to hide evidence and stuff and to cover up. So yeah, they're more than just 10-year-olds at this point, I think, in my mind. So anyway, the court has then been moved. They've started the trial. This has all come out at trial, and then we come to sentencing, because it's absolutely obvious, without a shadow of a doubt, that these two boys are murderers. So then what does the judge do? How does the judge then sentence two 10-year-olds that have murdered a 2-year-old in cold blood and have previously tried? So all this has come out. So what he does is he gives them 8 years. I know. You're screaming at this. I can imagine you, if it was me, I'd be screaming at the screen. 8 years. But then, because I think of public opinion, at the time, the outrage of such a low sentence, it was up to 10 years and then to 15 years. But under appeal at the European Court of Human Rights, it was then reduced back down to the 8 years. Now, again, continue to scream at the screen, I know, but I think you have to look at this case in a wider aspect, because what could a judge do? A judge would have then had to have done, it's a minimum of 8 years, but he would have had to put them in a care institution run by social services, which he did for 8 years. After that, them 8 years, they would have been 18, and they would have moved on to prison. But the difference is with this case is that they couldn't have done that, and I'll tell you the reason why. Because these two boys, the judge named them at trial. It's very unusual to name a perpetrator of such a young age. But I don't think the judge had any choice but to do that, because these boys were known locally. It would have been so unsafe for them. It was already unsafe for them to go into trial, let alone their identities to be known out there. So they had their identities changed. And so because they had their identities changed, so people couldn't harm them, to move them on to prison afterwards, that someone would have known. It would have been dangerous for them. All right, so I can understand from that point of view. I can't understand, though, that two 10-year-olds that committed such a crime, and it was proven that this crime was intentional, it was planned, at that age. Only got 8 years to begin with, but again, that's not for me to decide, that's your opinion. You let me know what you think. But they never actually spent one day in prison. They went to 2 separate care homes. I think John Venables went to Merseyside. It was like an 8-bed secure care unit run by social services, and I think Thompson went to Manchester. I think a bigger unit, but again a secure unit, but not a prison at all. So, and in these places I think they was given quite a lot of free access, so unlimited visits from family, outings, this, that and the other, day trips, not what you would expect to get if you just murdered a 2-year-old. So I think society saw that as not right. I know that James Bulger's father didn't take that well, because he doesn't feel that there's been justice been served. And I can understand where he's coming from, because I think that when you've lost a child and you hear about the people that have murdered your child are out having day trips. They've also, I think in Ralph Bulger's book, he says about where the 2 perpetrators, Venables and Thompson, were taken to James's grave so they could see what they had done. I mean, it's shocking, really, when you think these are the people that was looking after these boys thought that was a good idea. It certainly wasn't, because one, that is their sacred ground. That is the Bulger's family, and that is James's place of rest. They've murdered him. They should not have been allowed to go there. So I don't know what was going on with their treatment. But it's certainly that, I think, really upset the Bulgers, and I can understand it. So they've in 8 years. They've spent 8 years now in this care home, really secure unit. They've lived their life. They've done their GCSEs. They've done their A-levels. One's meant to be a great painter and everything else like this. I think Thompson's the one with the high IQ, and he is a painter, and he was sort of quite happy. And I think when you look at their life, when we talk about their life before the murder, I think they probably had a life of luxury in there. But let's carry on. So we've done the railway track and we've done everything else. So let's carry on now with the investigation part, because let's go back to the CC footage. So we know at 15:40 that Denise was in there, but 15:42 this child was gone. That's how quick it is to lose a child. So it was that quick. We've looked at the case in basic detail, I think, because with a child case you don't want to go into too much detail of that. What we're interested in, I think, is why. So in the 8 years, I think that Thompson and Venables were incarcerated only in this unit, which would have had the best medical personnel there, including psychiatrists, psychologists, anyone that they would have needed. Because also what would have needed to be done is that you want to try and rehabilitate these people, because that would have been the whole idea. And so you want to find out why they've done it. That was actually never found out. That was never found out of why they'd done it. With all these experts trying to examine them and prod and probe them and find out why they'd done it, it was never clear. It's never been made clear. They never actually said anything about their crime. So when they were 18, they was released from their care homes, and it's difficult really, because they were released, but again, controversy around that. So they've got new identities. We don't know who they are. We don't want to know who they are. Actually, it's illegal for you to even look for who they are. And if you do know who they are, to publish who they are, you would go to prison yourself. So there's a lot of rights that come with them being given new identities. A new identity would cost around £1 million per person per time. A criminal trial could cost £1 million, but it's not really about the money. If you're going to give someone new identity, there's usually a reason. Do you agree with the reason? You know, I think I do. I agree with them giving them new identities because it's so unsafe for them anywhere in the world to be known. There's vigilantism and stuff, and something would have happened to them. So I agree from that. Do we think that the court's done justice? I don't know. Do I think the courts could have given justice? I don't know, because when you look at the cases as the massive case it is, we're always have to come back to remind ourselves these are 10-year-old children. We don't expect that from children. So what would you do? You know, what could you do? So does James Bulger's father think they got justice? Absolutely not. Of course he doesn't. Of course he doesn't. Does society think they've been given justice? Some do. Some society do. And I think this case, even though it may be over for James Bulger, it wasn't over now as we look forward for Venables and Thompson. So, with Venables, we'll start with Venables. We're going to look at some background history first. Okay, let's have a look at Thompson and Venables' background. So Venables was a middle child, so you could say he had middle child syndrome, or this could be part of it, you know, not getting enough attention. But there's a lot of differences in with Venables. People think he came from quite a decent home, this, that and the other, which I suppose, you know, compared to Thompson's family, yes, he did. He did. But when you actually look behind that, there are some issues in there. There are some things that you could say this would make this child do certain things, whether it make him do murder. No, we don't know if that's the cause, but, you know, could it be part of it? It could be, it may not be. A lot of kids have bad backgrounds, but don't end up doing murder. But let's to go back to Venables. So Venables is a middle sibling. His older brother had a cleft palate. He had communication problems, communication issues. He had learning difficulties, and was known to have outbursts of anger issue, and you know, and tantrums, you know, quite violent anger issues, and went to a special school. And then you had the younger sister, who again had learning difficulties, and she was also in special school. Then you had Venables in the middle of these two people, these two kids, you know, I suppose normal, compared to the mum and the dad, who are now got to look after two disabled children, and Venables in the middle. So Venables did feel that he was neglected, or he was, you know, no attention was spent on him. And I suppose as you look at what's gone on in this family, I suppose it, you know, children look at things in different ways, and he could have seen it like that. When you have two disabled children, it's very difficult to have all your concentration spread out between three. These are the two you're concentrating on. But I think it goes a little bit more further than that with Venables. So Venables then started to act out a little bit. He started to have some He started to have tantrums, letting out anger issues and all this sort of thing. But it didn't work for him. His mother knocked that out and said, no way, you know, we know, they knew it wasn't for real. So that didn't work. So he tried different things that didn't work. Then at about the age of 7, he was bullied at school because he had eye issue. There was something wrong with his eye, a squint or something he had in his eye. So he got a bit bullied. So again, that then made him feel sort of, you know, unwanted, unliked, you know, as he felt the same at home. Then with the mother and father of Venables, was married, and there was an on and off relationship. 1 minute they was together, 1 minute they wasn't. It was a constant thing. His mother also had hysterical outbursts, and also was diagnosed with clinical depression. So there was a lot going on in that family, and Venables seemed to be the one that was constantly told, I can't cope with you, you know, you'll have to go to your dad's, or you'll have to go, because I can't cope. So she can cope with them too, but she can't cope with you. So again, it's that rejection. It was a constant rejection. He was bullied at school, another rejection. No one liked him, rejection. He wasn't getting any attention at home, rejection. So it's a rejection thing, and it was from a very early age. But given that, they still continue to see Venables every week or a few times a week throughout his thing, so they weren't that bad. But from a child's point of view, that could have done some damage to him. So at the same time, Venables needed to be moved to school because of the bullying and because he wasn't happy. He wasn't a truanter at that point. He was actually quite good at school in the way that he attended. But the school done a managed move, and that's where he met Thompson. So let's talk now about Thompson's background. So Thompson's background is his mother Anne. I think that's where I have to start. So the mother Anne was abused sexually and physically by her father, and really at a very young age wanted to leave that home, move on and just have a normal life so that she could get on with her life. She met a man called Robert Thompson Sr., and she actually married him quite quickly. By the time she was 18, she was married, and subsequently had 7 children with him in a very fast timescale. So what I think happened though is that she, rather than trying to get away from someone like her father, she actually married someone worse than her father, because he also abused her and he also abused his children. So she was also then by that stage an alcoholic, trying to cope. She was depressed. There was a lot going on in that household. She wasn't a parent at all. She couldn't cope with that responsibility. So now you've got 7 children. I think when Robert Thompson was 4-year-old, his older brother was removed from the home. The boy had gone into the local school, his school, and told them that he was being physically and sexually abused by the father. So that child was removed from that household. Subsequently, the father then left the home, leaving these boys and this woman that can't cope with these boys, these siblings, in this home. All Thompson had been known all his life was violence and abuse. There was no love. There couldn't have been. It would have been a false love. So you've now got the father gone, the mother who now can't cope, who's an alcoholic and cannot parent these children at all. You've got the older siblings who were also abused and hurt and brought up in violence and aggression and just a terrible household, now doing the same to the younger siblings. So they now become the abusers. Thompson himself had a younger brother, Ryan, I think, and he used to take Ryan out and just leave him and come home. He was dominant. He was abusive. Don't know whether sexually, but he was definitely abusive physically to Ryan. So there was a lot going on in this house. These people were well known, the Thompson boys, in the surrounding area as troublemakers, as bullies. So there's a lot going on. So when we look back now, I suppose, at what the police officer said about Thompson, about this coldness, no empathy. I looked at in the face of evil. That's what the police officer said at the time of being interviewed. You can't expect Thompson to have any empathy or cry. He was probably beaten for crying, so he wouldn't cry. You can't be weak. This is how he would have been brought up. You can't show weakness. You have to fight to survive, because that life is survival, without a doubt. So from a very young age, probably even a baby, very young age, all Thompson knew was violence, aggression, abuse, control. And if it wasn't by his father, it was then by his brothers. So that's Thompson's background. But now let's go on to the school, because this is where Thompson and Venables met. They met in the school once Venables had been moved to that school because of his bullying. Both of these children, though, now, Venables and Thompson, were held back a year. So again, now you've put two, one that's been bullied, one that is a bully, one that wants attention, one that's all his life has been known as to be dominant and to aggression, into a situation, an environment where they are the oldest. They are the oldest now in this class. Venables is actually quite a large lad. So he's no longer being bullied. He's now the bully. And the attention from that, he's met a friend in Thompson. You know, they're like-minded. You know, they just clicked. Both come from this background of needing attention, needing something, and they found it in each other, I think. So they used to then skip school together, because don't forget, Venables never really skipped school or played truant from school. He would usually go. By the time he'd met Thompson, he's in this new school, he was skipping school. The classmates from that school said they were both manipulative, they were both controlling people, they were both bullies, very bad bullies, and used to manipulate so much to get what they wanted. So from a young age, these, especially Thompson, was in this survival mode, I think. So that's their backgrounds. So do I think, with Thompson, do I think his background could have made him a murderer? Absolutely. Absolutely. Less people have murdered with less backgrounds than that. But then there, on the other side, you have a lot of people that have had a worse upbringing than that, have been terribly physically and sexually abused, and would never go on to murder or become a perpetrator in any way. With Venables, it was about his feeling of himself. He wanted that power and control. He wanted to dominate. He wanted to be the one that was being noticed. Notice me. Someone. Because he wasn't getting it at home. So that's their sort of two personalities. So, they've now left prison. Well, not prison. Care home. They're now in society. Don't forget, they've really never seen each other from when they were incarcerated anyway. So now Thompson has moved on. Thompson is now out of 18, and he's moved on. Nothing was ever heard of Thompson again, really, because one, we don't know his real name, but if even, you know, if we didn't, if something had come up, the press would have got hold of it. So Thompson's character is a person that I would say wears the mask of sanity really well. He's in, and the mask of sanity is a mask that some people wear, where they can be as normal as me and you, every day, live our lives. And then sometimes behind that there is a serial killer, but a lot of the times behind that is just a person that's coping with life. Okay, they're coping with it. They could be in a better place, you know, than Thompson was when he was a child. He's now in a good place. He's been educated, he's been helped, and maybe that therapy for him helped. Maybe removing him from that environment, this torturous, aggressive environment as a child, has helped him. He needed that break, because let's be honest, they had a better childhood in these care homes than they actually did at home, or at least one did, as we know. So Thompson's moved on. He's living his life somewhere, we don't know. He's under life licence. He's got new identities. We don't need to know his identity. We don't want to. So I think as long as Thompson remains happy, in control, because we hear he's in a relationship, and he's the person that he's in a relationship knows about his previous, and they're accepting of that, and he's got on with his life, and he's got into no trouble. But what the thing is with Thompson is, because I feel he wears this mask of sanity, it's when things start to go wrong for Thompson. So would I ever say he would never commit a crime again? Absolutely not. But it'd be absolutely madness to say that, because of one of his background, because one of the crimes that he's already done at such a young age. It's impossible that to someone with that probably wouldn't do anything again. But let's hope he doesn't. Now, Venables, on the other hand, is a totally different kettle of fish. Venables was the one in the interviews, remember, that sobbed like a baby for about 4 days, constantly wept, because I don't think he wept or showed any emotion towards what he'd done. This was about him. You know, you've been caught for murder, now you've got these consequences to answer. So Venables was a little bit of a different case. He had the emotion, he showed the emotion, but was it true emotion? You know, we have good actors, and, you know, just because one may look cold and, you know, unempathetic, that we believe that's all them, because for many years people did think that Thompson was the ringleader and influenced Venables. Now I don't think things are so clear cut as that. So with Venables, he is also released with a new identity after serving his 8 years in his children's home and going on with his life. He also had the same education and the same chances as Thompson had. He would have had all the therapies and everything for this rehabilitation. But in 2010, Venables was rearrested. Actually, I think he was rearrested before that. I think it was a couple of years before that, 2007, his first arrest was. He was arrested for fighting, and he said it was self-defense, didn't mean it, but he was also caught at that time with A-class drugs, cocaine. So really, he should have been gone back just for that. That's a parole issue there, isn't it, really? And then we'll talk about parole after. So he's then arrested again in 2010, and this time the charge is on indecent images of children, I think. Yeah, he just had some indecent images of children. I don't know what grade they were or high grade, but it was, I think he got 2 years in jail for that. Yeah, so it's downloading images of children, indecent images of children. So he did 2 years. So again, you know, he'd told people who he was and stuff. I don't know at that point whether he had a new identity, but he certainly didn't have a new identity again. I think that was the time he did have a new identity, actually. So yeah, 2010 was when the next identity came along, another £1 million on this man. So when we talk about giving someone an identity, new identities, it's about protecting them. There's usually deals that come along with that. There's usually clauses in them deals that say, if you do another crime, you lose your right to that. So I don't understand why in 2010 he didn't lose his right to that new identity, you know, for his identity to be known. Plus, he's quite a bragger, old Venables. He likes to brag. Remember, because he's this attention-seeking person, isn't he? You know, he actually told people that he was a convicted murderer. So you've been given a new identity. Society have paying for your new identity. The courts have done everything they can to protect you from the public, that some really would like to kill you, but you then go and tell because you can't help yourself. He really can't help himself. He needs this attention. Look at me, I'm a murderer. I'm a convicted murderer. He said it. So again, another identity given, but in 2017 he was arrested again. Now this time he was arrested for wait for this one. He was arrested for category A, I think, 392 images of children at category A, 148 images category B, I think 630 at category C, of child pornographic images of children. Now category A, forget the rest, let's just stick with the 392 category A photos of indecent images of children that would have, under this category, had penetration. Okay, they would have had to be the most obscene sexual penetrating photos, all right, to be classed as that. That's category A. Then we've got category B and C, and some are a mixture of the two. The children that he had looked at were between the ages of 6 and 13 were the main ones, but some were young boys and I think some were babies. All right, so this is this new charge 2017. Plus he was how can I say it? He was designing a manual, a paedophile manual, right? That's what he was formulating, a paedophile manual. So now we've got someone that's murdered at the age of 10. We've got someone now that 7 years later was violence on drugs. Then we've got someone again in 2010 that was arrested again, identity changed for indecent images of children. Then we've got someone in 2017 that was charged with holding masses of photos at grade A, at category A, B and C. Right, so this makes Venables a very dangerous person. He is not reformed at all. There's no way he is. So, I think Mr. Justice Edis said that Venables was a manipulator and also he was dishonest. He also stated that by producing this book, this manual, his intention was to carry out how can I say it? To carry out this sickening thing. He wouldn't have just looked, he was carrying on now. He was making his move into doing the act. Don't forget, this was just holding and distributing, downloading, keeping, distributing images of children. What the judge was trying to say, but because he was making this manual, this paedophile manual that he would share out, the intention there is that he would have followed on that crime with actual the actual, how's it, I don't even know how to say it really, because it's just such a terrible, this is such a sickening and sadistic thing that this man has done, and the images. He would have gone on to do a crime against a child that would have ended in another murder, or that child to be, damaged for the rest of their life. So this man then got 3 years, I think, and 4 months. I think that's what he got. And again, he was due to be released after August 2019. So he's probably out. All right. This is not the last we've heard of Venables. There's no way. This man is dangerous. Just looking at his history, just looking at that need to be wanted, that need to the attention, telling people that he's a murderer, collecting these images, having all this therapy done. And then let's just talk about, before we finally finish this case, about the probation. So it's about the appeals process, and then you've come out and you're on probation, you're on life licence, because they would be on life licence for all their life, both of these pair. We look at the parole board, right? So these pair, as I said before, have had all this work done on them for years. They've had every psychological test going. Not that they've ever admitted and done anything about this case in any of that. No one really knows why. So they know about psychology. They probably know more about psychology than I do, because they've lived it. So when you then take them to a parole board where you have a panel of 3, and one of them persons is going to be a lay person, right? You're going to have one as a psychiatrist, one as another doctor, or 4 maybe a psychologist. It's telling you, we've worked with these people for, years, and they're going to now give you questions, and you sit in this this meeting and you're going to be asked questions. Venables and Thompson would have known exactly what to say, because they knew the answers anyway. They'd had it for the last 8 years. This lay person that is there to represent society is never going to overtalk or outdo or manipulate the psychiatrist or the psychologist, because that's not what we do. It's programmed in it. Do you think they're psychologists? They know what they're doing, and he's there on a lay person to say about the public. He shouldn't be released because the public wouldn't like it, or whatever else he would have said. The psychiatrist is going to say, and the psychologist, well, they're reformed. They've had all the psychological help we can give them. They're reformed. And that may be the case for Thompson. Don't get me wrong. but we'll have to wait and see about that one. But it certainly isn't the case for Venables. Venables is a dangerous, dangerous person. He will not stop. This is not the last, probably, video that I'm ever going to make on John Venables, without a doubt. The only way he'll be stopped is when he does a crime again so bad that someone will probably lose their life and he'll be put in prison for life, or if someone or he does something to himself. This man will not stop. So, the case of James Bulger absolutely ended in November 1993 when the case was decided for him. But I think this case continues. This case will never end. Luckily, we live in a society that now we would, I suppose, we've got the technology where we would pick up a phone and we could find a kid now, and if you put up someone missing, it's quite quick and you get out there and we would know. It's very rare, these cases, that children actually do murder children. It's very, very rare, but it does happen. It happens all over the world. Have we given justice to James's family? I don't know. Could we have given justice to James's family? I don't know. I don't know. If this case come up again next year, or another case like it come up next year, would we do anything different? I don't know, because I don't know if we could. Because we don't know enough about it. So I hope you've enjoyed this case. Make sure that you press the subscribe button. Make sure you thumbs up. Follow us on Facebook and on Instagram. And until the next time, thanks for watching.